President Joe Biden is sitting down for yet another one-on-one television interview today. In an exclusive interview with NBC's Lester Holt, Biden discussed the political temperature of the country following the assassination attempt of his opponent, Donald Trump. Have a listen to a preview of that interview, which will air later tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Time.
Well, let's talk about the conversation this has started, and it's really about language, what we say out loud and the consequences of those. You called your opponent an existential threat. On a call a week ago, you said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was, there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said I want to be a dictator on day one. I'm not the guy that refused to accept the outcome of the election. I'm not the guy who said that wouldn't accept the outcome of this election automatically. You can't only love your country when you win. And so the focus was on what he's saying, and I mean, the idea.
But have you taken a step back and done a little soul searching on things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced?
Well, I don't think, look, how do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody? Look, I have not engaged in that rhetoric. Now, my opponent is engaged in that rhetoric. He talks about there'll be a bloodbath if he loses, talking about how he's going to forgive all the, actually, I guess, suspend the sentences of all those who were arrested and sentenced to go to jail because of what happened in the Capitol. I'm not out there making fun of, like, remember the picture of Donald Trump when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit with a hammer, joking about it?
Well, a major legal threat against Donald Trump is dismissed on the first day of the Republican National Convention. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. Okay, Richard, on any other day, this could be a top story, a massive legal win for Donald Trump. The judge in his classified documents case ruled the entire case should be thrown out. So what does this mean for the Republican presidential candidate?
Yeah, so this is a big win for Donald Trump, and he's had some successes in the American legal system. First and foremost, Judge Eileen Carroll, a Trump appointee, dismissed this classified documents case against Trump, saying that the appointment of the special counsel and the funding of the special counsel, Jack Smith, is unconstitutional. Basically, she's arguing that Congress did not appoint Jack Smith. Congress did not approve the funding of his office, so therefore he's overstepping his bounds. Now, clearly, this is a real setback for the special counsel. Jack Smith has already said he's going to appeal this ruling, but it doesn't matter. This process will take time, and it virtually guarantees that Donald Trump will face any criminal trial before November's election.
Okay, you heard the clip we played just then of Joe Biden's interview with Lester Holt. The full thing's going to air tonight on NBC. What do you make of that? He was asked about his use of the word put a bullseye on Donald Trump. What did you make of what the president had to say?
Yeah, so obviously circumstances have changed in the past few days since that assassination attempt on the former president. Yesterday, Biden called for unity, and Lester Holt was asking him about the word choice he used the day before. So obviously, Biden is really trying to sharpen his message, try to make his case that urging Americans to not focus on personalities or his shortcomings, focus on the contrast on policies. And that was the message he was trying to deliver. Now, was he effective? Well, you know, he stumbled a little bit, got lost in his train of thought slightly. So if you're a Democrat on the fence about his leadership, I don't think that's going to move the needle. But, you know, Biden's advisors and his campaign team are really trying to get him out there more to prove that he has the goods for a second term and that he can think quickly on his feet. But just to give you a bit of background on this interview, this was supposed to take place in Austin, Texas today.
Right.
But the president had to cancel his campaign schedule in Texas and Florida this week because of that assassination attempt. And the campaign team is really struggling on how to they're really trying to recalculate. How do they define Trump now that many people view him as a brave survivor of this assassination attempt? So Biden's clearly trying to choose his words carefully, retracting some of the comments, some of the words he used earlier against his rival. But what happened on Saturday has clearly changed the trajectory and the tone of the campaign. I'm looking forward to seeing what else Biden said in that exclusive interview with NBC.
Okay, Richard, thank you so much. That's the CBC's Richard Madden in Washington, and a week of intense news. Well, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, obviously the biggest of that, and it has turned the tables for once unified Democrats and divided Republicans. That, according to Jonathan Martin, the politics bureau chief and senior political columnist for POLITICO. He's been widely covering the lead up to this election, and he joins us now to discuss the fallout of the shooting over the weekend. Jonathan Martin, it's good to meet you. Thank you for taking the time. We heard a snippet just before we got you hooked up of Joe Biden's interview with NBC. It's airing tonight. Were you able to hear that? Did you hear what the president had to say?
I did.
What did you make of
And
that?
I was most struck by the fact that he walked back, saying that Trump was going to be in the bullseye. That's the first moment that we've heard Biden express regret for using rhetoric of his own against Trump. So it's a sign that Biden knows he has to show some give, that if Biden is to be true to his word about taking temperatures down, he has to lead by example. So that, to me, was striking.
The tone of the campaign has shifted since Saturday. I guess this is an example of it here. I mean, how does Biden navigate this going forward? Because what happened to Donald Trump on Saturday doesn't change who Donald Trump was on Saturday, and that's a central thesis of the Biden campaign.
Right. No, exactly right. The fact is that Joe Biden has still got to run against Donald Trump as somebody who he sees as not only unfit for the presidency, but somebody who represents a threat to America's traditional democracy. And when you start getting into that kind of language, obviously it can be inflammatory. What Democrats would say is Trump inherently demands that kind of language because he does in fact pose a threat. But therein lies the challenge for Democrats just days after their opponent was inches away from dying at the hand of an assassin's bullet. It's a darn tough situation for Joe Biden and Democrats. Time will make it easier, but these first few days are going to be difficult rhetorically for Democrats.
Okay, so the focus since Saturday has been 100% on Donald Trump. What happened? How could it happen? What happens next? But in the days running up to that, it was all about Joe Biden and why he has to go in the eyes of Democrats. And you're reporting that Nancy Pelosi's been calling people since June, trying to find a way to get him off the ticket. Like, what's going on there?
It's one of the most extraordinary stories in modern American politics. Take a step back for a minute. The longtime Speaker of the House, the most powerful lawmaker of our times, and Joe Biden's close ally, has been waging a coup plot, essentially. If it was in Parliament in Ottawa, it would effectively be a vote of no confidence, a parliamentary coup by the cabinet, effectively, of the Democratic government. But here in the States, it's basically a coup by House members and senators, led by, I think, Nancy Pelosi to some extent, who is very fond of Biden, but has become convinced that he cannot win this fall and is working the phones like mad, trying to wire a lobbying effort to push Biden to withdraw from the ticket. It's extraordinary, and it's been going on really since the day after that June 27th debate. And it tells you how concerned Democrats are about Biden and his ability to beat Trump this fall, and how concerned they are about the consequences of Trump returning to the Oval Office.
So do they down tools, Jonathan, in the wake of Saturday, or do they just keep going, these Democrats who want Joe Biden out? I mean, what happens given everything that's going on now?
Yeah. I think obviously in the first hours after the shooting, they had to take it down a notch. But I don't think that there's any desire among a lot of the senior congressional Democrats to stop this effort. Now, of course, this is taking place behind closed doors to some extent. You've had a lot of members of the House publicly say Biden should step down, but a lot of this is taking place privately. Here's the problem. As long as it's only a private campaign, as long as the Pelosi's, the Obamas, the Clintons don't go public, Biden's going to try to run out the clock and get to his own convention and fend off these critics. This is really a race against time because Biden can just milk it and basically put off his critics, and in a couple of weeks he'll be the nominee.
Okay, so let's switch to Trump very quickly because we don't really know where this Democrat drama is going to go. Trump is talking about calming things down and showing a different approach going forward. He's never really demonstrated that with any consistency in the past. What do you expect to see from the former president in the wake of this assassination attempt?
I think Trump is Trump. He may be somewhat sobered for the time being. Obviously, anybody who had such a brush with death would be impacted by it. He's, a human like anybody else. I'm skeptical that Trump is somehow going to change who he is, though, in any serious way. He's a 78-year-old man. He's already been president. I think Donald Trump is what he is. And I think, frankly, Democrats' best chance, maybe the Democrats' only chance to win this fall, is for Donald Trump to give this away. The line that I've been using a lot is that Democrats can't win, but Donald Trump still can lose. So this campaign really hinges on, can Trump keep it together? Can Trump not say outlandish and offensive things for the next 120 days? If he can, he's going to be the next president. But he is Trump. He has a tendency to say things that stir the pot, to say the least. So we'll see how long this new version of Trump lasts.
Okay, we got about 60 seconds left, Jonathan. It's Trump's self-control is obviously a key factor, but also the Democrats having to wage a campaign with kind of one hand tied behind their back, appealing for calm, but needing to demonize this guy. I mean, how does this work?
You nailed it. I mean, that is exactly their challenge. Democrats want to be the adults in the room. Joe Biden wants to be seen as the serious, sober, sort of father figure of the country right now at a time of unrest. But at the same time, they've got to take the race to Trump and remind Americans why they voted him out in 2020, but do so in a way that's not necessarily inflammatory so they can fulfill their promise to be the adults in the room. That's a tough line to walk, and I think it's going to be an enormous challenge for Biden. That'll be a tough line for any candidate. I think it's really tough for Joe Biden, who's shown that he has trouble driving a consistent message. So the work's on his shoulders. It's not going to be easy, but I think right now Biden's going to stick and is going to be the nominee unless something drastic happens in the next 10 days.
Yes, well, as we're seeing, Jonathan, a lot of drastic things can happen in American politics right now. Look, it was good to meet you. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. That's Jonathan Martin, the Politics Bureau Chief and Senior Political Columnist for Politico. Thank you so much, Jonathan.